Storms, check out this heat. By Thursday, we're talking more than 140 million people will feel temps above 90 degrees. And by Friday, the heat will start to creep into the Northeast. There is no hiding it all anymore. Summer is here. And this is America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Molly McCollum alongside meteorologists Felicia Combs and meteorologist Stephanie Abrams. Steph, this is the rainy season in Florida, but I think this is dialed up just a little bit as far as how much rain we're going to get just this week alone.
Yeah, just this week alone. It is.
Look at the amounts, just the sheer amounts that are going to be piling up in parts of South Florida, starting in the Fort Myers area, where we could see some spots up to 8 inches of rain, especially where we see training of thunderstorms. That's going to be an issue driving, as Steph was talking about, along the 75 corridor. If you're driving to your beach trip, you're going to have the windshield wipers going on full blast, trying to keep up with some of these downpours. Now, here's the timing for you in Fort Myers. It's kind of on and off for the first half of the day, so you might be able to fit in some of those outside plans. But the later that we get into the afternoon, and especially tomorrow, it becomes a little more consistent with the rain that's coming in wave after wave after wave. Here's 4 p.m. on Tuesday. It is still raining in the Fort Myers area over towards Sanibel and Captiva Islands. Very popular spot this time of year for beach trips. So fitting it in is going to be a little bit difficult at times. Now, Fort Myers, not only are we expecting rain Monday and Tuesday, but also all the way through the end of the week. This will bring our temperatures down just a little bit. So this weekend, it was very hot in the 90s. Those feels like temperatures in the triple digits. Now, because of the rain and the cloud cover, it's more like the 80s. So at least there's one silver lining to it, right? Let's take you over to West Palm Beach, down through the Miami area. We're talking 5 to 6 inches of rain. Now, we know we can get a quick inch of rain or two in just a single thunderstorm in Miami. So if we see training of thunderstorms, then we might very well find ourselves in higher than 5 to 6, maybe 7 to 8 inches of rain, like what we're going to see over in the Fort Myers area. So here's today. It's kind of on and off. Today would be your best bet to try to fit in some of your beach plans before things get really soggy for the remainder of the week. Now, there will be some dry times that maybe you can go run out and walk the dog or go for a run or whatever you need to do outside, but just keep a really close eye on the radar, because these thunderstorms, they're going to be packing some lightning too, and lightning always a danger in Florida, especially during the summertime. Here's the Tampa area in St. Petersburg, where we're talking rain as we start off Tuesday morning. And this is one of those days that it's actually going to be the second half of the day that'll likely be better than the first half of the day. So, Felicia, it's just going to be kind of a game, almost like Frogger, trying to go in and out of trying to find some of those showers and storms. And it's going to be a difficult week in the Sunshine State.
Yeah, and it already has been in some.
If we see that tan, we know you were outside this weekend.
Yeah, and it was.
You're welcome. Well, let's show you what can happen in parts of the South, because reports increase, the damaging wind reports increase. We still have a tornado threat too, but it's really the hail and damaging wind that takes over in a big order in parts of the South, and of course on the Front Range and the Rockies. I want to focus on the South because we have this front that's draped across the South, and it's not going to move a lot for the entire week. Of course, that's what's keeping us soggy in parts of Florida and along the Gulf Coast, but it's also going to keep us in a very stormy pattern, even areas north of Florida. This is what we have going on this morning. We saw some overnight storms in the Atlanta area, North Georgia. Now these are moving into South Carolina, and we have 2 thunderstorms just south of Augusta over towards the Furman area. These are slowly starting to weaken, so these warnings are actually going to be allowed to expire here in just a couple of minutes. They were producing penny-sized hail and 60-mile-per-hour winds, but again, they are weakening. So that's a trend we'd like to see as we wake up on our Monday morning. We are going to see more storms in some of the same areas, so coastal Georgia, coastal Carolina, South Carolina, over towards South Georgia, stretching all the way over into the Mobile area, and then back into Texas and even parts of West Texas, seeing some thunderstorms and some rain, which is good. We don't need any rain in East Texas, but West Texas is a different story when we have a lot of drought that's really been taking over, especially as the heat is starting to kick up just a few notches. Here's a look at the severe thunderstorm outlook for today. Savannah over towards Charleston, Jacksonville. It was an extremely hot weekend for you. I mean, it was close to the triple digits both Saturday and Sunday. So seeing some storms in the area it might be welcome to give us a break from some of the really intense heat. Let's get the timing for us because most of the morning is going to be quiet, maybe a few early afternoon storms around the Atlanta area. And then in classic summertime fashion, we see these start to bubble up in the heat of the day in Charleston, Augusta, Macon, Albany, all the way back through areas like Dothan and Mobile, maybe even Pensacola seeing a few showers as we get later into the evening and potentially closer towards the sunset time frame. And even through the overnight hours, we have some lingering activity. You might see the lightning on the horizon from some of those distant storms. In some of the downtown areas it floods. So a lot of caution this week needed with the rain in Florida, and a lot of caution as we look towards the northern half of the lower 48, where we're going to see several days of severe weather. Now, we do have a system that's working its way through portions of Montana over towards North Dakota this morning. It's a weak cold front, so it's not overly impressive, but it still is going to produce the amount of lift that we need to get thunderstorms going. There's some instability up here too. That's going to be building in as the day goes on, and we'll see that provide some thunderstorm activity as we get later into the day in kind of classic summertime fashion. So this evening, a lot of these areas that start off more isolated congeal into a big line, and those continue to move off to the east. Now, there are some stronger winds aloft, and that's going to help support some of our hail and damaging wind threat, which is very typical for this time of year, especially in portions of the northern plains. Possible severe weather today from areas up towards the Canadian border, all the way into the front range of the Rockies. So that's something we're going to be watching out for. Rapid City, Scottsbluff, kind of in the zone where we're expecting the most active weather. So here's a look at the timing. We get to around 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're trying to head home from work. You're trying to take the kids to some of the summer activities if they're out of school. I know a lot of schools are getting out this week in these areas. Bismarck all the way down through Rapid City and even into Scottsbluff. There's your chance of severe weather. And then through the overnight hours, we start to see things fizzle just a little bit. And then we'll pick it up again tomorrow morning in parts of Minnesota over to Wisconsin. And then finally, this starts to move out and move off to the east. So that's good news. We'll finally have maybe just a little bit of quiet time in some of these areas in the northern plains. Meanwhile, this is your morning activity in Minneapolis, Wisconsin, over towards Mason City and down into the Waterloo area. Hail, damaging winds, those will be the primary concerns. So your weather looks great today in the Twin Cities. If you have a flight out of the area, you're going to be just fine. But we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. That's when the afternoon activity starts to pick up. Steph?
And it does. Let's have a look at your... It's going to ruin your day a little bit, especially if you're there, say, visiting to do the outdoor activity.
Right. And they say there's not a bad day at the beach.
I don't know.
I don't know. This week might challenge that sentiment in a big way. Meanwhile, a lot of us are going to be feeling the heat in places that haven't seen it so far. The heat's going to be building in this week, especially across parts of the Northeast as the week goes on. But right now we have the heat that's really centered across the Pacific Northwest down through California and the desert Southwest. The jet stream is way to the south right now, and that's what's causing the cool down and the gloomier weather that we saw over the weekend in parts of the Northeast and New England and the Great Lakes. That's all changing, especially by the second half of the week. Look at this. We've got high pressure building in. The jet stream starts to retreat back to the north, and that's going to allow the heat to build in day after day. And by Friday, some of us are going to be feeling a big difference. It's going to go from more spring-like, cloudy, gloomy, dry air to humid, hot, plenty of sunshine. Like in Pittsburgh, today's 65. By Thursday, we're close to 90 degrees. That's a big difference. And you'll also notice that the air is going to feel a lot different, too. It's not that crisp, dry air that we had through the weekend. As the humidity and the moisture starts to creep up to the north, you'll notice, okay, it's definitely feels like summertime outside. And you'll notice that in places not just in Pittsburgh, but also along the 95 corridor. D.C., the dew points are going up, up, up as we head into the weekend. You get into the range of about 60 to 65 degrees with your dew point, and that kind of feels a little bit sticky outside. In fact, this is what the dew points mean and what it could feel like. Now, we've been sitting kind of in this dry to noticeable range. But you get up to 65, that's when it starts to feel a little bit muggy. Stifling, that's what we're seeing in Florida right now. That's what we have seen through the weekend. So by Friday, everyone is feeling the heat in a lot of places, anywhere from 5 to 15 degrees above average. That's in California, the desert Southwest. But look, we're getting it on the East Coast as well. That's just I also I'm not really an ocean person, so
yeah, give me a nice pool.
Yeah, a nice heated pool. How about that? Well, let's get you out the door in the southeast. awe-inspiring to see one of those, but they are extremely dangerous. And we're going to be seeing severe storms in many places, the lower 48, but also across the southeast, where the weather is going to stay pretty unsettled for not just Monday, but Tuesday. In Florida, it's going to be for the rest of the week. You can kind of pick out where we had overnight storms because the instability is a little bit lower. Places like Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, all along the Gulf Coast, that instability is untouched so far, and that's going to provide us for the chance of storms in pretty short order as we get into the hottest part of the day. These are our morning storms. They were severe about 45 minutes ago, but now we're just looking at rain, lightning, thunder as this passes through. We'll see a reemergence of some thunderstorms later this afternoon over many of the same areas like Savannah, coastal Carolina, southern Georgia, Macon maybe even included in that. Mobile all the way back through Dallas, Houston could have a few airport problems once again. It just depends on exactly where those storms form, and if they form right over the airport, yeah, you're going to have a problem. You're going to see some delays. Charleston, Savannah, Albany, Jacksonville. It would be nice to see a little bit of rain in Jacksonville because of how hot it's been this past weekend when we had both days close to the triple digits. But here's a look at the timing. We get to around the hottest part of the day, and there you go, like clockwork. It is classic summertime pattern where we see storms bubble up from Columbia, Charleston, Augusta, down through Macon, Albany, even over towards Dothan, back towards the Mobile area. This is pretty classic summertime fashion where we see these storms that linger until sundown, but even after the sun goes down, we still see those storms at least until midnight, perhaps even after that. Let's talk about Savannah and Charleston for a minute. Also two popular spots in the summertime, especially some of the beaches around the Charleston area over towards Hilton Head Island. This is 4, 5 o'clock. This is the majority of the activity that's going to be moving through, and even a secondary round in Savannah as we get closer to the sunset time frame, lingering into some of the hours just after dark. And Steph, I don't know, you were probably asleep last night, but there was some lightning that was way off in the distance, and a lot of people are tempted to call that heat lightning because you can't hear the thunder, but there's no such thing.
No such thing.
All those storms, check out this heat by Thursday. We're talking more than 140 million of us above 90 degrees. By Friday, that heat will start to creep into the northeast where it hasn't been so far. So basically, there is no hiding that summer is here. And this is America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Molly McCollum alongside meteorologists Felicia Combs and Stephanie Abrams. Steph, let's start with you, and let's start in the Sunshine State, which doesn't have a lot of sun this week, unfortunately, for any vacationers.
No,
but of good news, I want to take you city by city in Florida and talk about some of the timing, some of the impacts, how much rain we might see, starting in the Fort Myers area. And this could easily be some of the heaviest rain that we see across South Florida, where we will likely see some pockets of 8 to maybe even 12 inches of rain. It just depends on exactly where some of these training thunderstorms set up. But broad brush, we're talking 6 to 8 inches of rain easily. That is going to make for a miserable drive on 75. Your windshield wipers going full speed. Sometimes it's even difficult for them to keep up in these tropical downpours that we see in Florida this time of year. Let's get the timing for you because that's important as you're trying to plan out your week. We will see on and off showers today. Another big plume of moisture moves in for tomorrow, and that's going to keep us in the rain pretty solidly throughout the day. Maybe a few dry times that you can run the dog outside real quick and then run back inside or maybe head to the grocery store. But as a whole, Tuesday looks very wet. But it's not just Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday, all the way into Friday. This is what Steph was talking about, though. It's going to take our temperatures down a few notches. It was extremely hot over the weekend. And because of that, there were some heat advisories in Florida around the Orlando area. Those heat indexes were in the triple digits. And that includes in Miami, where we're also going to be seeing rain, 5 to 6 inches of rain. Again, that's broad brush. We could pick up maybe 1 to 2 inches of rain and one thunderstorm in the Miami area with the amount of moisture that's in the atmosphere right now. So be really careful. I know there's parts of Miami that can flood really easily because of all of the urban sprawl and development in the area, all the asphalt, areas that don't drain as well as others. Be really careful, especially as we head towards the later half of the week and the rain amounts really start to stack up in places. Monday today looks like one of the better days of the week. So if you have any plans you want to fit in, I would do it today before we really start to see the moisture take over for the remainder of the week. But Felicia, this is not the only problem that we're watching in the Sunshine State right now.
That's right, Molly.
They're on the Front Range, but we could see hail and damaging wind, lightning, flooding all across the southeast, where it's been pretty unsettled for the past couple of days and will remain so all the way through the upcoming week, especially for Florida, as we've talked about. Now, this is a loop for the overnight hours. You can see the activity that blossomed through the Atlanta area. Those were likely the storms that woke up Steph through the overnight hours, all the way into the Carolinas. For now, this is just round one. We'll see more storms that fire up, and this instability that's been untouched through the overnight hours. By the way, San Antonio getting quite a bit of rain and some thunderstorms this morning. Charleston seeing some rain to start off your Monday morning. Florence also seeing rain, but this is quickly moving off to the east, so it's not going to hang around for a long time this morning in South Carolina. But then we'll see more thunderstorms that bubble up in the heat of the day. This is such a classic summertime pattern that could produce feisty thunderstorms around the Savannah area, but anywhere from Charleston, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Pensacola, Mobile. I'll tell you what, Pensacola, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, sweltering this weekend. So rain could be a very welcome thing to kind of knock down some of those temperatures this afternoon. As we get to the peak heating hours of the day, that's when we see storms bubble up, and in classic summertime fashion, if they don't have a lot of movement, they'll eventually rain themselves out. But these do tend to have a little bit more movement with them this afternoon, even lingering into the evening and overnight hours. Even after you go to bed, there's still some thunderstorms out there feeding off the lingering instability. We also have storms in Texas today, all the way up through New Mexico and the Front Range of the Rockies. Once again, looking at some storms that could be producing hail. I know we're tired of the hail in Colorado, especially in the Denver area, but more is possible today. Also, some straight line damaging winds in the Texas area, Lubbock all the way through the Abilene area. You see that backward C shape, that straight line damaging winds on high-risk future radar, and it eats away at the instability, but it builds back in very quickly by tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. Dallas, Waco, Austin, you could see some delays if you're traveling on any of the interstates, and then down through portions of South Texas, which has also been extremely hot as of late. Let's check in with the Austin area and parts of the Hill Country for today. You'll see thunderstorms this afternoon, scattered, but then we get to tomorrow, another chance right as we get into the early morning hours. Felicia? Thanks. It's not you, it's me. Felicia's like, no,
it's not me.
It's difficult to drive in the rain, though. It's stressful, and we have a lot of that, a lot of storms going on across the lower 48. This is a very interesting water vapor this morning. There's a lot going on. I'm just going to point out some of it. Low pressure over the northeast. You can see some of the energy that's diving down across parts of the Great Lakes over into the drier air. Now Chicago, St. Louis. This is what kept it so crisp and cooler in parts of the northeast through the weekend. And then we have another area of spin that's close to the Canadian border over towards Montana and North Dakota. And that's where I want to start, because it's a low pressure system trailing cold front 2. It's a weak cold front, but it's still going to cause some problems for us as we see the daytime heating build the instability. The cold front is going to provide the lift to see these thunderstorms going, and we're going to see the potential for gusty damaging winds as well as hail. It really is hail season in parts of the high plains. We can see big hailstones with some of the more powerful updrafts that happen in this activity. Now, low pressure system moves to the east. We see storms that continue not only into the evening hours, potentially even overnight for us. And with the stronger winds aloft, that's going to feed into not only the wind threat, but also the hail threat. So here's the outlook for today. It goes from the Canadian border all the way down through the Front Range and even all the way down into Texas. But we're going to focus on this area for now, where we have some morning activity, just a few showers in North Dakota, but this bubbles up into the afternoon, those peak heating hours of the day, providing us with the most instability. Our cold front starts to move to the east. It's providing lift, and we start with more isolated pockets of thunderstorms, but then we see them congeal into one line, especially across South Dakota. We could see straight line damaging winds blasting through areas like Rapid City, down through the Scottsbluff area, Cheyenne, Casper, likely seeing some larger hail as we get into the afternoon. And then this continues overnight in the early morning hours into Minnesota as well as Wisconsin. That's going to be the focus for storms tomorrow. Any morning storms that lay down some boundaries perhaps could provide us with a chance for more storms later into the afternoon. Steph?
All right, well, when you're not getting the rain, there's going to be so much atmospheric moisture in the air that it's going to be like, I wish it would just rain.
I'm thinking about, too, in between the rain showers, the heat builds back in really quickly, gets really steamy.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch of mosquitoes that come out, too. So even when you have breaks, it might just be easier to stay inside this week.
Happy Monday, we ruined it for you.
I know, right? I really hope that, vacation plans, you still find something fun to do this week in the Sunshine State. We are looking at summer taking over in a really big way. In fact, we've had some areas that have been, bordering more on spring-like still this weekend in the Northeast, New England, the Great Lakes, but we're going to see a big pattern change. This past weekend and still today, we have our jet stream that's really centered across parts of the Mid-South. It's diving to the south, bringing that cooler and drier air. It's also drawing up that moisture right into places like the Gulf Coast states, but that's going to change in a big way. Our jet stream is going to retreat to the north, back to close to the Canadian border, and that's going to allow for this area of high pressure to edge in. And when it does, it's going to bring the heat and the humidity with it. Big changes in a place like Pittsburgh, where we are going to be in the mid-60s today. No complaints, mix of sun and clouds. By Thursday, near 90. But it's not just that. The humidity is going to be returning day after day. And that's all courtesy of the clockwise flow around this high pressure, drawing in some of that Atlantic moisture to portions of the 95 corridor, where we go from more comfortable, manageable dew points all the way to those dew points in the 60s. So what does that mean? You saw them starting off in the upper 40s, 50s. That's dry to even a little bit noticeable. But we get into the 60s, it starts to feel a little bit uncomfortable outside. The air feels a little bit heavier, and you sweat a lot more when you step out the door. By Friday, most of us in the lower 48, we're in full summertime. I'll be right back. Welcome back into America's Morning Headquarters. We're kicking off a new week here, a new week of summer for a lot of kids that are out of school. So maybe you're packing the bags and you're heading on vacation. If you're catching a flight this morning, early this morning, you're probably going to be just fine. Not a lot of problems across the lower 48 at the airports. Now, it's always better to fly in the summertime in the afternoon or in the morning as opposed to the afternoon, because the afternoon is when we see a lot of that activity pick up. Now, San Antonio, certainly the exception this morning. Hey, San Antonio, if you still need to take the dog out, I would do it right now, because you've got all of this rain that is knocking on your door. It has to move through San Antonio, and it's not moving all that quickly. Not to mention a lot of lightning packed in with this complex. Now, it's not severe. There could be some stronger winds in here too, especially right along the leading edge. In San Antonio, I bet if you look west, you probably have a pretty intense shelf cloud coming your way. If you can safely send us pictures, we'd love to see them. But heads up in San Antonio, that's the activity for today. As we get later in the afternoon in Texas, Felicia, we could see some more delays in the Lone Star State.
Yeah, definitely want to.
Weather gives us all the feels. So now let's check in with our emotions and take a look at our 3-day Feeling the Forecast with Disney and Pixar's new movie, Inside Out 2. That we're watching for severe weather, and that includes in portions of the South and the Gulf Coast states, where the instability this morning, it's untouched. We did have some storms that moved through Atlanta, northern Alabama, back through the Carolinas. That was earlier this morning and late last night. But we're going to see the instability recover very quickly again. This is what's left of the storms now moving away from Charleston. So Charleston, you're just about done with the rain, as well as Myrtle Beach getting the rain right now, but it won't last for too much longer this morning. Our severe weather focus is going to be on coastal Carolina as well as coastal Georgia down through just north of Jacksonville. But Jacksonville, you could certainly see a storm later today, as well as Tallahassee, Pensacola, Mobile, all of those places sweltering in the heat this weekend. So it might be welcome to see a shower or thunderstorm to help cool you down just a little bit and take just a few degrees off the high temperature in the afternoon. Speaking of the high temperatures in the afternoon, when we get to those peak heating hours of the day, classic summertime fashion, we see storms start to bubble up, kind of like popcorn, all the way across the high-res future radar. Some of them could be a little bit stronger, like over towards the Savannah area, south central Georgia, Charleston perhaps. We could see gusty, damaging winds and maybe even some hail within the strongest storms. So watch watch out for that. But even storms lingering through the overnight hours, feeding off the lingering instability. Let's check in with Charleston, Hilton Head Island, very popular this time of year. Savannah, always beautiful, though this time of year it gets pretty humid in Savannah, right? This is 5 p.m. We've got storms along the 95 corridor as you're trying to get home, maybe trying to get to some of your evening plans. You're going to be fighting the rain, but that's not the only round. We'll see another round as the evening goes on before clearing out through the overnight hours. Now let's put our focus on Texas through New Mexico up through the Front Range, where we've seen a lot of storms as of late and a lot of hail. I know we're kind of nervous about the hail in the Denver area just because of what's happened recently. We're going to see more storms not only this afternoon, but this evening. I mean, look at this complex in Texas moving out of the Lubbock area. That backwards C shape, that is straight line damaging winds that will continue to move to the east and eventually weaken through the overnight hours. Steph?
The pictures of that hail.
Fuel all those storms. Check out this heat. By Thursday, over 140 million of us will feel temperatures above 90 degrees. And by this Friday, that heat will start to creep into the northeast, where it's been very nice as of late. By Friday, there is no hiding that summer is here. Now, this is America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Molly McCollum alongside meteorologists Felicia Combs and Stephanie Abrams. Let's start with Steph. She is talking about the Sunshine State this morning, which really has a serious lack of sunshine this week, Steph. Little kind of gal, too.
Yeah.
Steph is fun, right? Let's take you through some of the cities in Florida, because we're going to see some pretty big impacts in a place like Fort Myers, where there's going to be some surrounding areas on the 75 corridor that see close to 8 inches of rain. Now, repeated heavy rainfall, it's very possible we could see more to that, maybe in the range of 8 to 12 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain in a short amount of time. And I know the Florida soil is extremely efficient at draining rain, but at some point, especially when you get this amount of rain over and over again, it's going to get overwhelmed and we will see flash flooding. Today on and off, but tomorrow, big plume of moisture starts to move in, and that will allow for rain pretty much consistently throughout the day. There might be some dry times you can, run to the grocery store real quick, or maybe, do some errands without having to fight the rain. But as a whole, this is going to be a really soggy week upcoming. It is going to knock our temperatures back just a few degrees from the scorching heat we had this weekend, but still soggy week ahead. That goes for the Atlantic side of Florida as well. West Palm Beach, Miami, anywhere from 5 to 6 inches of rain. That's just an estimate. So it's very likely that we will see more. And think about how easily it floods in portions of Miami, where we have a lot of urban development. The rain doesn't drain as well in some areas, and you get a pretty good thunderstorm that sits right over Miami, or you get repeated rounds of thunderstorms that come through one after the next, and we will see flash flooding in the area. Miami, it's a soggy week for you too. On and off showers today, but then we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it is rinse and repeat. Let's head to Orlando as well as Daytona, where the rainfall amounts are a little bit less than what we're seeing in the southern part of Florida. But still, for any theme park plans, this is not the kind of forecast that you want to see. And so, Felicia, this is not the only problem that we're actually seeing in the Sunshine State right now. There's been a lot of shark sightings over the last couple of days.
Yeah, we've had a
lot of the lower 48 facing storm threats this week, including the southeast. It's a really unsettled pattern. We've got this front that's lingering pretty much right along the Gulf Coast states, and day after day it's going to continue to pull up some more moisture. It's going to feed the instability with the daytime heating. And look at this line moving through San Antonio this morning. That's a lot of rain, a lot of lightning, not great for your morning commute. But the rest of us are fairly quiet after this cluster of storms is now moving into the Atlantic. Still some rain in Myrtle Beach right now, but we're almost on the back edge of that. So if you're waiting for the rain to end, you don't have too much longer in Myrtle Beach. Savannah, you'll see storms later today, as well as Mobile, Alabama. Atlanta, potentially as we get into the afternoon. We know how it goes this time of year. Houston over towards Dallas. The Waco area also could see just a few scattered thunderstorms, but where we're most likely to see the strongest storms is along the South Carolina coast, Georgia coast, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Pensacola. It was so hot this weekend. I mean, we had highs that were close to the triple digits. So, a shower or two might be welcome to take a few degrees off our high temperature this afternoon. Here, as we get into the peak heating hours of the day, boom, you see the activity really start to blossom on high-res future radar as, classic summertime fashion with storms. We see Savannah get around to thunderstorms as well as Charleston later today, south central Georgia, Dothan, Alabama, Mobile, Alabama as well, where the humidity is also sky high for you. Plenty of moisture in the atmosphere for these storms to work with, and they can put down a lot of rain in a short amount of time. So it's not just the hail and damaging winds. Have to watch out for the flash flooding too. As we move over to Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado, once again under the threat for severe weather. This goes from San Angelo, Lubbock, Taos, all the way up to the front range of the Rockies. We're talking Denver, Colorado Springs again. A lot of the instability this morning is down towards Texas, but as we get into the afternoon, we get into the evening, it starts to draw up to the north as well as the moisture feeding the storms. Look at this line moving out of Lubbock. You see that kind of bowing motion? That's straight line damaging winds. We're getting into the season that we start to see wind reports go way up as far as damage from wind reports, as well as hail, which we've seen plenty of hail in Texas as of late. Tuesday afternoon, Dallas, Waco, Austin, the Hill Country down through Houston. Could we see some delays at the airports? You know, two major arteries right there. Either you're traveling to Texas or you're getting a connection through Texas. If we see storms right over the airport, that certainly could cause some problems, and these even linger right into Wednesday morning. Let's zoom into Austin and Waco, parts of the Hill Country, the I-35 corridor. A little bit messy this afternoon. That tapers off, and then Tuesday morning, we could even see some storms in the area, Felicia, to start off your Tuesday.
Yes.
Florida. So, you know, that amount of rain and what Felicia was talking about, you know, as we get later into the week, we certainly will see that add up in a big way. Let's head to the northern half of the lower 48, and there's a lot going on water vapor right now. I want to point out a few of these swirls that we've been watching. We've got this big area of low pressure that's over the northeast in New England. That's kept the weather kind of gloomy throughout the weekend and the first part of the week. We have a small low that's diving its way across portions of the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes. And then we also have this area of low pressure that's now moving into eventually the high plains later this afternoon. Now, it's not an enormously strong system. It's a weaker cold front. It's a weaker area of low pressure, but it's going to be enough that we see some issues later today with daytime heating building in. It's adding to the instability in the atmosphere. And then you have the cold front that comes along. It's providing the lift for the thunderstorms and the upper level disturbance with this upper level low that's passing through. And we will see storms from Montana to Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, even down through Nebraska. They'll start off with more isolated pockets of thunderstorms and then congeal into one line, especially across areas like South Dakota and Nebraska. And that's where we could see those straight line damaging winds fueled by the stronger winds aloft that also can support the hail threat as well. It's the time of year that we really see the hail threats and the wind threats pick up big time. Possibly seeing the strongest part of the severe weather over towards the high plains. Wyoming gets into the severe weather this time of year, over towards Scottsbluff, Rapid City, but anywhere that you see in red, including all the way down to the front range of the Rockies. Denver, I know you've seen so much hail lately, but there's another chance for hail today. Let's talk about the timing for a minute because we get to the peak heating hours of the day. We have 3, 4, 5 o'clock, and we see the storms start to fire up. 5 o'clock, we could see this line through South Dakota that produces quite a bit of wind as it blasts to the east. And then we'll see things taper off through the overnight hours, only to pick up in activity over Minnesota and Wisconsin as we get into tomorrow. And that's where our severe weather threat picks up tomorrow across many parts of the upper Midwest, stuff that are frankly just tired of seeing the storms.
Oh, kind of exhausted from climates where you're getting up and you want to go get your morning workout in, or you want to spend some time outdoors. And as soon as you step outside, it's like a sauna. I can't breathe.
I can just go get breakfast instead.
Yeah, just a little like
inside sounds
fruit.
nice.
Yeah, AC. I agree.
A lot of people are going to be battling the heat because we're going to see a big time summer pattern take over, and that includes places that haven't really seen the summer heat as of yet. And we're talking to you in the Mid-South as well as the Northeast, where this weekend, even though we had clouds and a little bit of rain, temperatures were not all that bad. All thanks to the jet stream settling across the Mid-South and the Mid-Atlantic, bringing down that cooler, drier air with it. That's going to be a thing of the past. The jet stream is going to retreat back to the north. Very classic summertime pattern here. As high pressure builds in, the clockwise flow around the high pressure is going to circulate not only some of the moisture up into parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, but we're also going to see the high pressure help build in the heat day after day. Big changes on the way for a place like Pittsburgh. Mid-60s today, mix of sun and clouds, but Thursday, We're close to 90, and that's just your temperature. That doesn't factor in the humidity. Most of us are going to be feeling the return of the humidity. I know we're already dealing with it in the southern states, but we've had more comfortable dew points in the 50s for parts of the 95 corridor and up into New England. But look at this. By Friday, our dew points are in the 60s. So what exactly does that mean? You have dew points in the 50s. It feels more comfortable, more manageable outside. Maybe it's just a little bit noticeable that you have some moisture in the air, but you get up into the 60s and you're like, okay, it feels more like summertime outside. And it also, your body doesn't sweat as efficiently when you have the higher dew points. So by Friday, Steph, a lot of us, it's feeling like summer.
Not officially until.
Welcome back into America's Morning Headquarters on this Monday. And for many of us, summertime is in full swing. And that means vacation season is in full swing. Maybe you're packing up and heading to the airport this morning. You're going to be just fine. For a lot of our major airports, there's not any troubles there. Some exceptions in places like San Antonio, where we've got this line of thunderstorms moving through, causing a lot of rain, a lot of slowdowns on the interstates around the San Antonio area. As we get into the afternoon, Texas, the Lone Star State, could see some more troubles around Dallas, around Houston. It just depends on exactly where the thunderstorms form. If they're by the airports, then we would see delays. Over to New Orleans, it's possible to see some delays there for the airport for you. It's not just Texas. We know that Florida is extremely unsettled right now, and with all this moisture, thunderstorms moving in, rounds of thunderstorms, we could see delays in the Sunshine State as well as on the Front Range of the Rockies. Here is the look for the severe weather, the outlook for the severe weather today. Thunderstorms developing in the heat of the day, damaging winds, hail, localized flash flooding being our primary concerns, and that extends right up into portions of the high plains as well as the northern plains. Steph?
Thanks, Molly.
Difficult because you want to get the dog out before it starts to rain. Let's check in with a few cities where it might be out in the open and not impacting anybody. We will see more storms, not just in Colorado today, but also in parts of the Gulf Coast states where it's really unsettled. We have untapped energy. We had storms overnight in northern Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, over into South Carolina, but all of this energy closer to the Gulf is untouched right now, and that's where our front is lingering around, and it's going to lead to rounds of rain. Now, we do have a feistier thunderstorm complex moving through San Antonio and points down to the south on the I-37 corridor. Be aware of that. It's not just rain. It's a lot of lightning passing through, too, and that'll really kick off your morning. And a more complicated note as you're trying to get to work or you're trying to get the kids to summer camp. Just give yourself some extra time. Now, where storms fire up again later this afternoon will likely be along the South Carolina coast, Charleston. I know we had rain this morning. We're in for more this afternoon. Savannah, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Albany, Dothan, all the way over to Mobile, Alabama. Many places that have been sweltering in the heat lately. So a thunderstorm, well, it might be kind of welcome as long as it doesn't ruin any of your plans this afternoon. It'll help cool you off just a little bit. This is 4 p.m., so kind of classic summertime fashion. We get to the later part of the afternoon. Thunderstorms start to bubble up. We see them in Charleston. We see them in Savannah just in time for rush hour in the evening, and then sprinkled across south central Georgia and over into Pensacola, and as well as Mobile. Now, maybe it might impact some of your plans in Pensacola, but as far as the unsettled pattern that we have in Florida, northern Florida is looking a lot better than southern Florida. Another popular vacation spot this time of year, Hilton Head Island over to Charleston. Many great beaches around the Charleston area. You could have your plans disrupted later today as we watch this wave of rain and even some stronger thunderstorms. You see that around the I-95 corridor, potentially producing hail and gusty damaging winds. Those move out, maybe another round in Savannah and points down to the south towards the Brunswick area, Cumberland Island. That will happen later in the evening. We also have the threat of severe weather in Texas today. San Angelo, Lubbock, all the way down to Del Rio. That stretches through New Mexico and along the Front Range of the Rockies, where we've seen a lot of severe weather as of late, and we have yet another round expected today. Here's the timing. All the instability building to the north into the afternoon, sparking thunderstorms. This line moving out of Lubbock, blasting to the east. That could produce some gusty straight line damaging winds, and that'll eventually move through the Dallas area overnight, but we'll see another round for Dallas, Waco, Austin, the Hill Country, down through Houston as we get into Tuesday. Steph?
All right, there's a lot of